And then we had folklore to do with rain. In the whole Caribbean, and when there's rain and sun together, this is the devil's about, up to no good usually. In Dominica, funny enough, there was a wedding going on in the devil's family with rain and sun together. And it went like this. La pluie qu'a tombé, soleil qu'a cléoué, so rain's falling, sun shining. La diablesse qu'a maillé de la pocham. The she-devils getting married behind the back door, clandestine, you know. And I remember hearing that whenever it rains, I would imagine a great big wedding happening in the devil's family. So I wrote a poem for the children. So it's La pluie qu'a tombé, soleil qu'a cléoué, diable qu'a maillé de la pocham. La pluie qu'a tombé, soleil qu'a cléoué, diable qu'a maillé de la pocham. Rain falling, sun shining, the devil courting his bride. Take care to shut the back room door. Quick, get indoors and hide. Silent and invisible, he'll watch your every move. And this, my friend, I know for true. When rain falling, sun shining, and the devil strolling his wife, you better just be out of sight, or it's you, your soul, or your life. La pluie qu'a tombé, soleil qu'a cléoué, diable qu'a maillé de la pocham. La pluie qu'a tombé, soleil qu'a cléoué, diable qu'a maillé de la pocham. And I use poems like this to introduce proverbs or folklore in Kwéyòl, in the Caribbean. But I use both languages because we operate in both.
I was going to ask you how Creole proverbs were created, but I think that's a long-winded question.
How created? It's the Afrogenesis. It's the answer about.
Oh, the same thing that you mentioned earlier. Okay.
Because in general, proverbs have no authors. Generally, in proverb studies, you know that it was begun somewhere and propagated, and no one can attribute a proverb to a particular person. But it's interesting, if you think of Creogenesis, which is something we haven't spoken about, there are two actual schools of thought. There's a school of thought about Afrogenesis, that it's really Africa, that our languages would have had the roots in Africa, and then there is the body of evidence to support the different languages from Africa that contributed the most to French Creole. And then you have those who say no, our French Creoles are from Europe, and they again show a body of sources that prove to them that it's really European languages. But when whichever school of thought you want to actually use, at the end of the day, the Creoles are new languages. So these new languages, from one Creole to the next, because it's the same worldview, that's something we haven't spoken about. When I talk about better translating, it's because the worldviews are different. There is such a thing as the Creole worldview that we overlook. In the same way there's a French worldview, there's a British worldview, and from one Creole to the next, the translation is much, it's easier because the semantics are retained, the syntactical structure is retained, and that's what I have found. And the proverb that would have made me recognize while I was living in Martinique, there is, and I don't speak the Creole well enough to say it, but pas jouer carrément tout en pas fini, traverser la rivière. And I noticed that it was the very same proverb that we have in Jamaica. So my study would have started from seeing the similarities, as if it was the same proverb but in a different language. Whereas if you are translating that into French, there is no French equivalent that's going to retain the structure of the alligator, the crossing, and the river. So that is why when you go from one Creole to the next, because of the Creole worldview, you maintain all those elements that are usually lost in proverb translation.
I think we certainly can learn a lot of the proverbs, the Creole proverbs. We can retain that, because again, the Creole, many of the Creole proverbs we have in English Creole came from our French-based Creole. We may not even be aware of that. You would say, for example, mariage tinidan, and we would say in Grenadian Creole, marriage have teeth, meaning that marriage is a difficult thing that you have to work on. So what we have with many of our proverbs in English, Grenadian, English Creole, they have come in what I call, well, not what I call, what is called a relexified form. Relexification being a process where you replace the words of one language with the words of another language without interfering too much with the grammar. So the words just go straight from one language to the other. So you have an expression, you would say, in Creole, Maka konet ki pie boy kamonte. That in English, relexified, we say in Grenada, monkey know a tree to climb. It's so I think we can teach our children a lot of that, because a lot of our wisdom as a people of African ancestry, I think a lot of our wisdom is distilled in proverbs and idioms. So I think I would like to see us, focus on that. So I think a lot more work can be done, but I think there has to be this awareness of the language and that it is an important part of our identity.
One other one, probably because of its links with Africa, it says, Si ouwe bab kama wadu pui di fe, voye glo asusa wu. In Hausa, it goes, Inkaga ge mundang uwanka, ya kama wota, seka shafa wanaka rua. If you see your friend's beard catch fire, throw water on yours. So for me, again, here is somebody saying something in St. Lucia. Then you go to the African setting, and there you hear it again. And then you think, well, these are valuable to the communities that had them. So really, it's a question of getting the valuable kind of sifting of human experience, either in song or in proverbs.
Well, my favorite proverb is very difficult because there are a lot of proverbs. And there's one, Lebab Kamawadu Pudife Uzezau. Have you ever heard this one? Your friend might be in trouble. You don't rejoice because something might happen to you. You understand? Take heed.
Mon verbe créole préféré, Timoun Pati Chaudière. Ça veut dire les enfants. Un enfant grandit, il ne reste pas tout le temps petit. Il grandit.
Well, I like this one. Mama Majeweze dans un fond glacé, which means your mother it grips. The literal translation is the mother it grips, the kid's teeth are soured. So in essence, what the proverb is telling us is be careful what you put out into the world because it may fall on your children.
There's many that I use, which is like plita plitris. Alors plita plitris means the later, the saddest. So it means that if you don't do it now, you might be sad tomorrow. You see what I mean? So this one is plita plitris means that we act today. Tomorrow is going to be too late. That's what it means. There's another one that makes a sakilapu, l'eau pa kachaye.
Sakipou, la rivière pa kachaye.
Sakilapu, la rivière pa kachaye.
Sakilapu, l'eau pa kachaye.
Meaning that what is for you, is not going to be taken away from you. Like if you are longing for something, the longest while it takes time, and people tell you, Sakipou, la rivière pa kachaye. La rivière means the river doesn't take it away from you, meaning that it may take whatever time, but it's there for you, you will get it.
La pluie pa kachaye mon.
Ok.
Parce que en fait, comment dire, la pluie en fait ne soulève pas les montagnes en cause de l'hiver, c'est-à-dire que la pluie en fait, même si elle peut dévaster beaucoup de choses, la montagne ne pourra pas le dévaster.
Tout le monde vient la caillou et yo bouise manger. Aider yo, ba yo manger puisque yo kay kakari ou même kakaka. So, parle about ça, just buy moun la manger. Pas try chebe manger pour qu'on. Non. On vous bail mon bail. Aider ou ça.
6 mois en la journée, c'est pas la vie diwante. 6 mois en la journée, c'est pas la vie diwante. 6 months in jail is not forever, or it wouldn't last forever. And it's more figurative, it's not literal, eh? So you have to somewhat think and dissect, and so don't take it literal, it's not literal. But it means that no bad situation in life lasts forever. And that is one of my mantras in life, to be positive and to give people that hope that they need, or, because there are things that sometimes you think, my goodness, my whole world is falling apart. No. Don't worry too much about it. It will pass. And there's another saying which is similar. It's very short in English, that too shall pass. But in Creole, we're extra. So 6 months in prison will not last forever. It's not the end of the world.
And I remember the warning she used to give us in French Creole. Said, what did the mother pig say to the little pig? And the little pig would have said, the little pig said, "Ça qui fait bouchou long que ça," meaning, why it is your mouth so long? This is the little pig saying that to the mother pig, and the mother pig says, "Ishmwe, say vinyuka way," meaning, come in, you will see.
Mots que nous pi préférés en créole. Pour moi-même, moi j'ai un pile. En pile, parce que son bagage, toujours à réfléchir sur lui. Mais, yon mot moi préféré en pile, que moi j'aime en pile en créole, c'est mot coucouille, qui voulait dire, bon, ou dit nous pas dire en anglais, pour nous dire seulement en créole, qui voulait dire, pas dire qui ça lui voulait dire, mais mot moins préféré en créole, c'est coucouille. Et puis, en parlant de parole, moi, mais parce que nous avons discuté révolution haïtienne, moi, mais ça a été dit pendant révolution, qui c'est couper tête bouler caille. Ça, son parole, moi, quoi, qui est important en pile dans vie nous en tant que haïtien, et spécialement en tant que diaspora cap chercher puis comprendre qui côté nous sortir et puis qui connexion nous gagner à Haïti qui capable aider nous avec vie nous. M'a fait un petit campé là.
Eh bien, nous tous savons que les gens qui parlent créole. Et puis, des gens qui parlent blanc créole. Et puis, qui parlent anglais. Là où ils parlent anglais, des gens qui parlent bien apprécier ça. Mais les blancs qui descendent à la créole, et qui entendent ça. Mon ate, mon gawi. Puis, un peu le monde dit, un blanc qui a plus goût. Là où dit en créole. Et puis de là, je vais savoir.
Une histoire en créole et qu'on la raconte en français, ça n'a pas la même, c'est pas la même chose, ça n'a pas le même poids. Okay. Voilà quoi. Quand on est fâché et qu'on dit à quelqu'un, en français tu m'emmerdes, et quand on le dit en créole, pourquoi tu fais chier? C'est pas la même chose. Tu comprends? C'est vraiment pas la même chose quoi.
Des fois, là où on se chemin, là où on la place, là où dans la veille, n'importe quoi où il est. Et puis, mon cas parle libre. Et puis, mon enjouté. Le mon enjouté comme ça, c'est plutôt Kwéyòl qui parle, plutôt black Kwéyòl qui descend, plutôt vieille parole aussi. Là, on est vieille parole qui parle. En vieille parole en anglais, ça n'a pas fait rien. Mais là, mon cas joué, là, mon cas joué maman, par exemple, en Kwéyòl, ça a affecté au mauvais. C'est quoi là?
The delivery is just phenomenal. Like, I remember my dad could say anything and she would just have you in stitches. And I noticed that, I don't know if they do it in Sainte-Lucie, but in Dominica, they always say things 3 times for emphasis.
Yes.
So the girl, blem, blem, blem.
Oh, we have to go far, far,
Yeah.
far. Yeah.
So that always makes me laugh, yeah.
It's funny. I think the right delivery is funny. And I think the mixture of the English and the patois sometimes, it just, yeah, it's funny.
I love my boyfriend. Hence why when we wake up next to each other, I turn around and I say, Bonjour, Salo, because he's the light of my life.
The way I see it is like Creole is very much about, you can see almost the image when we talk about it. There's a lot of words that almost like just the sound, like for instance, you say tombe blic or voodoo or stuff like that. It's just like literally the sound. So it's very impactful because you visualize it. You see straight away what they're trying to say. So I mean, I guess it happens in every language, but yeah, certainly my mum would just say stuff because that's just the way her mum would say it, and everybody understood what it meant.
What made your mum different to many other parents, I would say? Because your mum is obviously different in that respect, that she would actually talk to it in you, and I'm assuming she didn't mind you replying back?
No. I don't think she did. I don't think she did mind. Not that we did always, but I don't think she minded at all. It was her language. It was who she was.
She was just shooting it out.
Yeah.
She goes to the butcher and she'll tell him
She'll
that
tell
she
the
wants
butcher
to
to
speak
say,
patois.
yeah, and send us to the shop. She's a character. Strong woman.
Yes,
She
didn't go out socializing much, but she did go to the market or go to the butcher's, like I said, down the road from her. And she talked patois to them, and they seemed to know what sort of meat she wanted.
She'd drop some English in there, give them a clue now and then. But it wasn't her concern. She communicated. She was a good communicator, so they got her.
Quand tonton mè ka vin Sinai, c'est juste ça. Ouais, c'est pas c'est juste ça, il jase Sinai. Et quand il Sinai, il ka parler plus patois. Mais il partait Sinai, il ka parler anglais tout seul. Il était un homme blanc. Ouais. So like, mais c'est pas anglais, mais c'est venu ici à taille, mais je commence à parler anglais quand Jean était même. Quand il peut-être actuellement il a parlé créole. Yeah man.
But then when we heard mum and dad talking in conversation, it was usually about stuff they remembered of back home. You'd see them laughing and hear them, and so that's when you got real longer sentences because there were stories that were being told.
Like my mum used to say to my sister, "O pa ka lave la assiette la, lave bon down." Sorry, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to. But you have to say what you say. But yes, I will tell you what a bit, but I'll tell you later.
When I come home to a sink full of dishes, because he knows how much I love doing them, I say, "Pa kon to ye chou mwen." To mean, I love you.
Là où parler en blague en créole, ça ka koye non mwen. And people there who understands it must have a laugh. Okay? So, like I said earlier, if a man curses your mother in English, it ain't mean shit to you. But to tell it to you in the Creole language, whole chou pa bon.
When all she does is ask for money, I say to her, to let her know the money's on its way, baby.
Yes, my aunt was born in 1923. My grandmother was working at the time, and so she was left with her grandmother, which would be my great-grandmother, and she spoke French Creole exclusively. And so my aunt then, it became her first language, you know. And there was this family joke that her uncle, my aunt's uncle, you know, he was busy, he had a store, and so he didn't make enough time to go and see his mother. And she obviously would have spoken about this to my aunt as a child, who would only have been about 4 or 5 at the time. And so one day, finally, when he did go to see her, as soon as he got into the house, my aunt burst in with ou c'est un saloperie ou baka veni moi mama ou, meaning you're a dirty good for nothing, you don't come and see your mother, you know. So of course, because she was that young and because they knew where it came from, of course it became a family joke, you know.
I got on a tube once and these West Indian women were talking about me and they didn't know, and I sat there, and then when I got off I said, "Moka well plita." They said, "I'm going to see you later," and they were like, they were talking about the size of my head. It's a cruel world.
Yeah. I'm teaching French in a challenging comprehensive school in Hackney, and these boys, all boys, not interested in French. Why do we have to learn this froggy language? But there's one particular boy who was, what would you call, a pain in the neck. He teased other children, he terrified them, he walked with a limp when it was not yet fashionable to walk with a limp. And he called me Sacré African. I must have told him off, "You damned African." So I just pretended I didn't understand. And one day when he had really pushed me too far, I asked him in really great Kwéyòl to get his backside on the chair. Assis à la chaise la moka fouteu hot finetla, otherwise I'm chucking you out the window. And he made double take. He looked at me, he smiled, he looked around, nobody else had heard or understood or bothered. And he sat down. And he had this grin on his face, and the rest of the lesson, "Miss, can I clean the board? Miss, can I give out the books?" He was putty in my hands. It was wonderful. And I realized his parents must have been Dominican or Sainte-Lucie. I had no trouble with that boy from that day onwards. Wonderful. Up till now, I think about him and wonder, where could he be? What's become of him? I hope he's okay. I won't give his name because he may be watching. But it's quite a good memory because he lingered after class and filled me in, so I had an inkling of how things were at home and partly explained his behaviour.
Well, I think this is the only phrase I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to do this in my best Dominican accent as well. Gede Bodina. Yes. Yes. Which was, look at her behind.
Yes, yes.
My mum, that's the only thing, that I remember from my childhood, because my mum and my grandmother used to say that all the time about me and my little cousin and my sister, because our bums and our nappies would just be so big. And would just say that to us all the time. So that's the only thing and the funniest thing I know in Creole.
If we only return to using the Creole to make a joke, whether it's a joke about somebody else, like we are seeing we don't want somebody to understand, or we are only using it to curse people and so on. That's one aspect of the language, one aspect of us. And I'm happy that you're still using it in any form, but we are not respecting it by not speaking about the other beautiful and positive things. Not that the jokes aren't positive, but if we are only using it in one context, we are limiting it and we are not respecting it enough. And so if you can make a joke in Creole or storytell, which is wonderful, then we can begin thinking of expanding the parameters within which we use the language.
Pour moi, tout, il y a un peu de parole avec un peu de mots que moi, j'aime un peu en créole, et puis il est un peu difficile pour me choisir ou seul. Mais pour moi, m'a dit que mon plus préféré, c'est un clioté. Et puis, mon clioté, ça veut dire le bagage comme si le bagage a flashé. Presque même genre avec des étoiles que vous avez dans ciel là. Et puis pour moi, il rappelle que nous toutes ces lumières qui clignotent dans façon, nous clignotent dans façon par nous. Et l'important pour nous changer ça, que nous ayons lumière dedans nous. Et puis c'est lumière qui nous toutes liées. Et puis phrase que moi plus préférée, m'a dit que en culture haïtien et proverbe important en pile. Et puis, il y a un proverbe que je aime, c'est un proverbe qui dit avec patience, ou après trip fourmi. Une autre façon pour dire proverbe ça, c'est avec patience, ou après tété fourmi. Et puis, ça veut dire que faut nous connaître que avec patience, n'importe bagaille possible. Faut que nous fassions travail, faut que nous étions sur ce chemin pour nous faire ça à faire. Et puis, à temps, nous privé. C'est ça, ma dernier pour me dire, ma campé là. Merci.
I suppose when I think of my mom, I think about the Sainte-Lucian saying who says, "Moi kai mette ish mwen sous tête mwen." I will put my children on my head. So I'm crossing this river of life and I am taking the reins. I'll put them on my head as if I'm crossing the river and then put them down on the shore so that I'll deal with it and give them a ride till they are strong enough to get on their own feet and hopefully do the same for their own children.
Okay, the Lania Shy was Lania Shy. There's quite a bit that I love. I love the old Creole sayings. Somewhere quand un plier, c'est yon kadi même pas talking about chinois, you obligé battre blanc, which means that, which literally translated means the same stick that beats the white dog will beat the black dog. So, which means what's good for the goose is good for the gander, in essence.
Some pas connaître grand passé. It's life. You think you know everything, but at the end of the day, what you don't know is really beyond you, as the literal thing says, older than you. But it's the idea that you may not be as knowledgeable as you think you are.
I like that one. I like it very much.
C'est mieux ou rien passer au pas rien. C'est mieux ou rien passer au pas rien. Translation: better a fruit fly than nothing. Huh? So there are so many very, very interesting Creole proverbs and so on. Depending on the circumstance, depending on the situation, you know what I mean? Yeah. But I particularly like this. C'est mieux ou rien passer au pas rien.
They're all written down. Well, they're not all written down. Some of them are so rude. I can't turn around. I have to. Oh yeah. Here we are. Here we are. This is this. This is quite good. Amba weze pani zoe, se moon kila, kini zoe. It's not the bush that has ears. It's the people behind the bush that have ears. Be careful what you say in public.
Oh my God, I got so many going through my head. My mom always says to me, là-bas et là-bas, c'est la bœuf la sauté. You know the meaning? For example, she'll be saying something to me and I'll be like, she would say, yeah, là-bas et là-bas, bœuf la sauté. It's like when somebody gets an opportunity, like, I don't know how to explain it, but advantage kind of thing, but they only goes towards the nice person than the other person they think that's tough. Does that make sense?
But here is one that perhaps every Grenadian can relate to, because there would hardly be a Grenadian while growing up was not told by the parent, "Come here, come in." It means to say that when the child is critical of what the parent is doing, the parent simply tells the child, "You will understand later. You have not yet arrived at the point where you would see why that is happening, why I am causing this to happen." But we know that the Creole people used to say, "Vini uka vini, uka we." So vini, uka vini, come, you are coming. U kai we, you will see. So you may not be seeing it now, but you will see.
Oh, I know one. Yes, a good one is tout pot ni couverture, which means there's someone for everyone. Every pot has its cover. So yeah, tout pot ni couverture. Couverture, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, RCI was one of the first radio stations to actually carry Creole on the airwaves and so on. One of the first ones, and I think, and to the extent that one of the announcers on RCI at that time was a guy called Sam Flood, but most people know him now as Jugbois. He remains unquestionably so the most popular announcer on radio by a long way, you know. He's not a favorite of mine though, but he's extremely popular. And I think that particularly in the early stages, he was a favorite of mine, and he was really reaching people, you know, and everybody who wanted to be informed listened to him on Radio Caribbean, you know. So in that regard, Radio Caribbean really played a critical role in terms of the development of the language, in terms of changing attitudes to the language and so on, you know, with Jugba and so on. And they continue to do so even up to now, because they still continue with the Creole programming and so on.
There is Maryse Condé in the way she writes. She incorporates Creole, but it's usually not the, as we would say, overt Creole. She would do a sort of interplay of Creole and French. So the French person seeing the word thinks it's French, but because it's not making any sense to him or her, he realizes that it's a foreign term. The Creole person seeing the expression, she also uses proverbs, the expression, the word, would recognize it as a Creole term. But when it comes to the publisher, then the book would seem acceptable, because again, it's all about marketing and the publishing and the audience. So it's the Creole hidden in the French.
And I think it's talking about this, I quite agree with Dr. Bogle in the sense that even when you read some of the novels by Raphael Confiant and others, also use the same tactics, you know, and have different, you know, Creole terms, and even the name of the fruits, or our green banana, Tinet, for instance. And so it's not only the women, but also the men. And there's also a linguist from Guadeloupe, Marie-Christine Azal Mathieu, who has done quite a lot of work in terms of looking at the standardization of French Creole and so forth. Yes.
So Merle Hodge was one of the pioneers behind getting French Creole taught actively in this day and age. Previously, Marilla Montano worked with Roald Gibbons at the University of the West Indies, not the actual campus proper or the faculty, but in the extramural department. And she was a minstrel and very much involved in promoting culture and so on. So Roald Gibbons initiated that effort, and Marilla Montano was the one delivering French Creole classes. I have no idea of how many people it reached, but it was a very, very important step. I think it was in the 1970s. And then Merle Hodge, later on through her organization, Women Working for Social Progress, they teach English and they teach Spanish. And she said, well, let's teach French Creole, because they had also got a grant from BP, which had supported Lise Weiner's dictionary.
The negative attitude was perhaps a bit more pronounced then than now. Now, the language has been embraced a lot more and so on. And I would credit the work of the Folk Research Center for that. One of the, arguably the biggest cultural festival in St. Lucia, the biggest by far, is Journée Kwéyòl. International Creole Day celebrations and stuff in October. Bigger than the carnival, by far. And the objective of Jeanette Creole was actually to, in a sense, force people into a situation where they were being presented with all that is Creole and stuff, and being told, look, that is who you are, you know, and you must embrace this thing because that's you. It's coming from you. It's you, and I think people have, in a sense, embraced it to the extent that the Focus Center would have liked. It has surpassed the expectations and all this, you know, and attitudes to Creole has changed tremendously as a result of that.
So, in terms of people who have done an amazing amount for French Creole in this country, I mean, I could talk about the whole region to a lesser extent, but in this country, from a chronological perspective, John Jacob Thomas, 1869, our absolute hero, Merla Montano and Royal Gibbons, Lawrence Carrington and Ian Robertson, Natalie Shallery, and all the teachers that came after her, before and after, like Jacques Ranceau from Martinique. We have our St. Lucian teachers here, like Sandra Evans and Ronald Francis. And of course, Namdi Hodge and all the elders in Paramin, all of our parents and grandparents, who, in spite of what society told them what to do and what not to do, they still infused us with a love of family, a love of culture, a love of nation, a love of self.
So, what do you think about Morgan and his contribution to the language?
I think it's great. I really respect and admire Morgan because he actually went over, lived among some West African peoples and understood how the language worked and made the connection with ours. And that was very gratifying to know, you know. For example, French Creole, we say la pluie a tombé, whereas the French say il pleut, and the Jamaicans say rain a fall, for it's raining. That's very much an African perspective of the world, where the rain is the active ingredient there. I mean, if you're living, I don't know, near a desert or very dry land where you're praying for rain, where you have to get the rain dancers to come and worship the rain gods to bring rain. Rain is powerful. It's just another way of viewing the world. He explained that sort of thing. I think it's great. I like what he's done, and he's not boring at all. And when you read what he writes, it's down to earth and interactive.
Ish, pied papaye, poisson, banja, fig. Okay. Moun la ki ni kabwit, du bout souple.
So in terms of Dr. Dalphins, I think he has done a fantastic job, but I know of him more because I am an academic. So I'm not sure how much, if I spoke to my mother, she wouldn't be so aware of him. But the work he has put in has been instrumental in the Creole language. And I think he is also involved in the language policy. Am I correct? So, and this is work that people have been looking at for 50 years already. So, you know, it's not just that they have been starting, it's, you know, incremental. And of course, they're getting on with their lives. So people like myself go to his work to begin understanding the things that I see coming out of the official, the primary sources. Yeah, so while he was coming from a more linguistic background, for the historian, I have to go to him. And the work people did, such as the Creole dictionary. I have right here the Creole dictionary. I have the New Testament. So people like them have put in a lot of work into those things, creating the orthography. I mean, this is elementary work, but without it, there is no way we can now be speaking about, we can have somebody like Dr. Evans teaching St. Lucian French Creole. at her school. And you would be surprised that the person who began teaching it and promoting it is a Guyanese who would have been familiar with the French Creole speakers in Guyana, who were generally a St. Lucian community. So yeah, Dr. Dalphin is fantastic.
But I always tell people that Haiti started it all for the Caribbean and Latin America. there's no denying the importance of the fire that Haiti started, and that pushed other people to question their realities and create change. So I think when it comes to the Caribbean and the larger Latin American space, it all began with the Haitian Revolution, and then also everything leading up to the Haitian Revolution. In terms of Haitian Creole, it is a French-based Creole, and it's the one that you'll find the most content on if you want to learn a French-based Creole. And you mentioned earlier, Daryl, that you mentioned places like Grenada, Sainte-Lucie, Martinique, Guadeloupe. These places, Trinidad, these places all speak a French-based Creole that, if you learn Haitian Creole, could help you with learning those other French-based Creoles as well. So I think there's many reasons why Haiti is the starting point. But I mean, we're honestly the most fly. I don't know how else could I answer that question? You ever see a Haitian woman on screen? I don't know. But really, Haiti is the starting point. I don't think that you can talk about anything in the Caribbean without talking about the influence that Haiti had on Caribbean history.
He now, a dedicated and an accomplished teacher, found that what was keeping his students back from learning is the fact that they didn't speak the language which was being used to teach them. It caused him now to do something for the language, and he did it for his students. He did it for the education system in Trinidad, but it had an impact on Creole wherever it was in the Lesser Antilles. He documented for the first time, he documented this language. So he did for the patois in Trinidad of that day what Professor Roberts did for the patois in Grenada in our time. And what he did was bring recognition that it was a language, because he then traveled to England to present his paper, and it was well received. So he created the place for Creoles as a linguistic entity.
Yes, I think the influence of John Jacob Thomas is tremendous. I think his contribution to the Creole language cannot be overstated. This was a man, I mean, you have to think of the time that he was writing that book. He wrote The Theory and Practice of Creole Grammar in 1869. He would not have had the technology that is available to us today. And I have read that book several times and learned so much from it, because in it he goes into the Creole orthography, he goes into the etymology, he goes into syntax, he has a whole section of proverbs and idioms. And so he was really one of the first persons to attempt to document or codify the Creole language. And I think that is so important, because if a language is not documented or codified, one, it is not held in high regard, and two, knowledge of it is not preserved. So I think he made an enormous contribution to our knowledge, our modern day knowledge of the Creole language. He was Trinidadian, but he spent quite a bit of time in Grenada also. So his work was truly foundational. He laid the foundation on which many could build and explore the Creole language. So
One, I mean, an absolute gentleman and a dedicated teacher. I mean, he had teacher coming out of his sweat pores, you know, right? And yes, he did have. He was. Oh dear. An old colonial in a way. I mean, you know, obviously a St. Lucian guy, you know, black St. Lucian guy, but he had been at school when he went to school when if you as a kid taught patois in the street or in the field walking home and an older person saw you, they would beat you. You were not, I mean, this is British colonialism. They did it in Wales. They did it in Ireland, you know, and they did it there. So that was his childhood was under that, you know, regime and things like this. So enormous respect to him. But I could understand completely what they meant about his interpretation and the way he wrote it, and all the time trying to correct the grammar, saying, of course, in English as I remember, you know, this is not English grammar, and things like this. And I think he was a bit confused as well about how pidgin, Kwéyòl, patois, you know, develops. When I said to him, of course, French is a patois, and he just ignored that. So a great man, who, I mean, in his own way, you know, pushed the envelope. And I think, you know, as far as I know, everybody involved in Mouvement Kwéyòl and people doing this and all this kind of things, enormous respect for him. But there was academic differences.
Just one day he was actually a teacher, an education worker. But he had that interest in the language. And he was able to, on his own initiative, to develop a very, very comprehensive Creole dictionary. It's probably one of the most comprehensive dictionaries in Creole that I know of, and stuff. And he was able to develop that on his own, practically. When he had the complete thing, the manuscript and all of that, then you know, I mean, other people joined him in that project, but he worked on that entirely on his own, and I find that to be remarkable, really, actually, when you consider the you know, I mean, the thickness of this book and all that is in it. But he also has a number of smaller books on the Creole language. I think perhaps his interest was in recording the language in its basic form and having it available to people so that people could actually see the importance of the language and people would be familiar with expressions and those sort of things within the language. And I think that he was able to do so quite effectively.
Moi crois important pour moi montrer ich moi parler créole et moi crois important pour jeune moun apprendre parler créole because c'est une langue qui a mot, c'est un langage qui a mot. En Sainte-Lucie ou ka moun pas chef parler créole encore. Merci bon Dieu pour gouverneur général nous, il met les créoles en dedans kay concite. So à présent c'est ministre gouvernement qui a parlé créole en kay concite. Le gouverneur général la ka bay ça il fait front speech, il a fait en anglais et en créole.
But a most amazing person who is now Governor General of St. Lucia, Dame Dr. Perlette Louise, was active in education, and she was active in the Kwéyòl development of Kwéyòl in Kwéyòl language, in founding member of Mouvement Kwéyòl Sainte-Lucie, Kwéyòl. Sorry, I have to look these things up now because I forget some of these titles. And so I was very lucky to meet her as well and work with her, and she was very encouraging. Then I was able to visit St. Lucia. And in '83, I think it was, got to meet people like the Governor General, Perlette Louise, who was a head teacher, and she translated patois French legal documents patois, legal documents for people who could not read and write in their own language. And she's just an all-round amazing person.
The previous Governor General made it her duty, in a sense, to speak to the people in both languages, so that perhaps she would be a little more elaborate in English, but having made a point in English, she would in fact repeat that point in Creole. The point being that everybody should have the opportunity to hear for themselves and to understand for themselves exactly what the policy of the government is going to be, as articulated by the Governor General. The attitude of certain people that people would consider to be important. Typical example would be our former Governor General Sainte-Lucie. I mean, you speak to anybody downtown and they'll tell you how that she's a remarkable kind of person. The way that she's able to reach out to people in both languages, and people have come to a point now where they're saying, boy, well, if Dimple can embrace that language in that way, who am I not to? So all of those things, I think, have contributed to the change of attitudes to the language.
As a Governor General, she always promoted the language. And the conference I viewed on the past 2 days, she was one of the speakers. And I think because she's so elevated in the society, but her French Creole is, I mean, people like George Odlum, Paba, I think because they are people who hold high positions, are very much respected and loved by all St. Lucians. That has really given impetus to people thinking proudly of the language. But I really think what Paba would have done with the Folk Research Center and their work since, I remember feeling the change where Creole, it was good to speak Creole. It was, promoted it as children, and probably it was more like when I was 15, 16, 17, 18. Now it was something to be proud of, that I was jealous of children who spoke Creole and I couldn't speak it as fluently. I was vexed that I had lived in England and didn't pick it up as a first language. And people like Dame Paulette Louise really, elevated in our minds, not elevated, I shouldn't say elevated, really put in our minds that this is something that shouldn't be seen as the language of the poor or the disenfranchised, but that having a second language, having two languages, I should say, is something that we should be proud of. And people with two languages always learn both languages even better than someone with one language. I don't think a price can ever be put on the contributions of these persons in terms of their contributions to elevating the Creole language.
No, of the Governor General then is that she's a culturalist. She used to be at Creole cultural activities. La Rose, La Marguerite, at that time she was a teacher, okay? And she used to be, and not just being there, being a participant, okay? Paulette Louise transformed the governorship of this island. Culturally, she did. Folk culture was her thing.
Di adieu. Je souhaite tout pays la paix et puis la bénédiction de Dieu pour ce temps qui va venir. Et je prends l'occasion, ça là aussi, pour souhaiter joyeux Noël et puis la bonne année. Merci, merci, merci un pile.
Why do you think Felix Henderson is important to Dominica's Creole?
Because I think as the host of Experience Creole during his time, he did a lot of work. I think he broke so many barriers during his time, things that people were not expecting to happen with Creole happened during Felix's time, during his tenure as the host of Experience Creole. Felix allowed, give Creole that voice. I mean, there was a voice of Creole back then, but the treatment of Creole, he treated Creole differently. He made it humorous. He made it fun. You know, he went to the population only speaking Creole. He spoke to them, he listened to them, he had conversations with them. He took Creole to the streets. You know, he took Creole to somewhat the schools because he taught the Peace Corps groups in Dominica Creole. So he played a pivotal role in the development of Creole in Dominica. And for that, I think he is special and he should not be forgotten for what he did in Creole. And he also gave young people an opportunity, a voice, while he was the biggest voice in Creole in Dominica at the time. But he also opened doors like me, who told me that, Kiwana, you can do it, you know, and he held my hand during that process. And for that, I will be forever grateful for him opening up that type of, you know, that door and an opportunity to help, you know, put Creole on the radio, help give Creole that space.
Alors, Sylviane Telchid, c'est pour moi la personne, et je dis vraiment, et je parle au singulier, bon, même si on l'associe souvent à quelqu'un d'autre, mais pour moi, Sylviane Telchid, c'est quelqu'un avec qui j'ai beaucoup travaillé autour de ses ouvrages, parce qu'elle a plusieurs ouvrages parus chez nous, qui malheureusement est malade actuellement, très malade. Mais pour moi, c'est la personne qui fait que nous en sommes là aujourd'hui. C'est grâce à elle, grâce à son combat, grâce à son sérieux, grâce à sa conviction chevillée au corps que le créole devait sortir du dallo, quoi, comme on dit chez nous, elle y croyait vraiment. C'est-à-dire que c'est vraiment quelqu'un qui avait qui a vraiment la croyance, hein, qui savait que c'était un combat juste, qui s'est investi à ses risques et périls, parce qu'à cette époque, à l'époque où elle a commencé le combat, ce n'était pas évident d'enseigner en créole, alors qu'on est censé rester dans les programmes. Elle a vraiment pris des risques, et au prix aussi d'un travail colossal. C'est quelqu'un qui a une force de travail, dans les séances de travail que j'ai eues avec elle, c'est quelqu'un qui a une force de travail absolument colossale. Et par exemple, quand on a fait Bois pour nous aller, elle y mettait toute son âme. Et ce qu'elle dit aussi, c'est que nous, on a des outils pour le travail. Parce que, alors, ce qu'elle appelle ces timons-là, ça veut dire c'est la relève, quoi. C'est pas tout de défendre le créole, de parler du créole comme ça, mais il faut absolument donner de quoi, du grain à moudre en quelque sorte, aux jeunes générations, aux jeunes enseignants qui arrivent, Myrna Bolus, enfin bon, il y en a quelques-unes. Je dis quelques-unes parce que ce sont souvent des femmes qui ont maintenant des CAPES créoles, et qui, grâce à Sylviane Telchid, ont des outils pour travailler. Parce que comme Sylviane Telchid était elle-même enseignante, elle était bien placée pour savoir ce qui manquait. Donc moi, ce que je salue, c'est vraiment la force de travail, le sérieux. Sylviane, c'est quelqu'un à qui on dit « Ah mais tiens, on aurait pu faire telle chose ». Une idée comme ça d'ouvrage. Eh bien, un mois après, elle vient avec son manuscrit au sens propre du mot, c'est-à-dire un ouvrage écrit à la main, en disant voilà ma copie. C'est le sérieux et la force de travail. Je l'ai déjà dit au moins 10 fois, mais c'est important de le signaler. Et c'est vraiment Sylviane Telchid et Sylviane Telchid seule. C'est-à-dire que c'est quelqu'un qui a servi de locomotive à beaucoup d'autres personnes qui parfois ne le lui ont pas rendu comme il l'aurait dû.
I know there are many people who could be paid tribute to. Unfortunately, there's just not enough time to do everyone. However, there are a few more names that I would like to pay tribute to, like Marshal Jamila Fontaine, who created a dictionary on Dominica's Creole and promoted the language extensively and fought for it to receive the respect he thought it deserved. Elodie Jourdain, who was one of the first people to document Martinique Creole. Suzanne Comer Sylvain, who was the first Haitian woman to become an anthropologist and researched on the African roots of Haitian Creole. Today, some of her work is held in the archives at Stanford University, California, in the United States of America. Evans Leon, who wrote Sainte-Lucian stories and shared them orally at traditional festivals, and some of his work went on to be published. Jean Bernabé, who wrote in praise of Creoleness and wrote important books on Creole, in particular the grammar, and was a professor in the subject, and promoted the language extensively in tertiary academia. Credit must go to people like Raphael Confiant, who is a Martinican writer known for his literary commitment towards Creole literature and culture. Confiant, in the late 70s and 80s, wrote novels entirely in Creole, in the writing system that was developed during that period, and is still to this day a strong proponent of Creole and Creole being used within the Caribbean region. If there are any more people that you think need to be paid tribute to, maybe consider leaving their names in the comments so other people can look up the great work that they have done.
There's a one, if I had to try and say femme rouge, say a volée, it means the red ant is always the thief. But it's a proverb where it means that sometimes there's a whole load of different people, but look for the red ant, that's the one that stings you, that's the thief. I don't know, I just got that because they used to have a guy called Femme Rouge, and well, I've got a little shack out there, and he did me a little thief.
Yeah, tete pakal, tete patolu pour l'estomac. A mother can always feed her many children. So basically, no matter how heavy the bust, the body can cope with it. So a mother can feed her children. So they had ways of speaking, and you heard this. There's another one, lalin koui, jubadine. And my aunt, and the moon runs as day overtakes her. But my aunt is quite dramatic. She'd say, lalin koui, 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 jubawe. So the moon's running, but inevitably it's going to stop running because day's going to come, isn't it? So this guy, very poetic, isn't it? Mm. And I love those proverbs. And then, yeah, I've got Piti Hash about Gobois. So, yes, people spoke in riddles. Mm-hmm. All the time. Oh.
There's the one I have currently on my hot building is Jol Fedet mi bonapi. Jol Fedet mi bonapi. Translation. Well, your mouth makes a debt, but it's your backside, your ass that pays for it.
Pli ou poisse, pli chien haleu, and I've heard variations of that. So the more you in a hurry, the more the dogs are on your heel. because my mother was always saying it. My mother was always saying it. And I find myself always saying it, like, you know, telling myself, don't rush, don't hurry, because something will slow you down. Just take your time. So that is one of my favorite, because my mother always says it. And now I really understand the meaning of it.
Oh, some of them I like because they're reflective. One of them says, c'est pas dit, c'est pas ça qui ka chwe ki mwen haï, mais ça qui ka di mili. The snake says, it is not the one that kills me that I hate, but the one who says, look at the snake there. Okay, so I like the kind of reflective content on some of this.
C'est Grandiri qui a fait sac diri. C'est Grandiri qui a fait sac diri. So that means it's the small things putting together that makes great things coming out.
Qu'un béret pas molli. Exactement. C'est sûr, c'est le plus connu et en même temps c'est celui qui représente la vie au quotidien, surtout aujourd'hui.
J'adore, je valide.
Lastly, another one which goes like this, it says, Kitei bat misei, you know, and literally what it says is, let them beat their own misery. So in a basic translation, it means leave them alone, okay? But when you do the word for word translation, it's literally, they must beat their own misery. So give them the space to beat their own misery. And I like that concept because it's saying, well, you know, you can point out problems in terms of the human experience. But at the end of the day, it's humans who have to solve them. So it's either the personal problem of the individual or our collective psychological problems in which we must solve them. They won't be solved by other people. Some of them are bits of song that either it's the tune or the reflection it gives me. There's one a bit of a song which goes na 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 la da na na na. Moi di nèg la ay travail pour la vie. Moi di nèg la ay travail pour la vie. Moi di nèg la ay travail pour la vie. Li di moi si li mort te weli consolima ay ay ay. Li di moi si li mort te weli consolima. I said to the black man, go and work for your living. I said to the black man, go and work for your living. He said to me, if he dies, you should bury him like Solomon. He says that if he dies, you should bury him like Solomon. The ironic thing about that is the person sang me the song, and then afterwards they said, le moi di Solomon, ça moi vle di vieux chien qui là. When I'm talking about Solomon, I mean the dog over there. So you've got the kind of juxtaposition of irony and wit and analysis of a situation. So I find some of those interesting.
I like the expression that we use called débrouillard pas péché. I think he really encompassed the mentality that we have in Guadeloupe. It basically means that how you say it in English is like the end justifies the means. So whatever you need to do to get to where you need to, just do it.
Maman from Palma.
Yeah.
Which means you should not be fighting for a guy because literally what that means is How can you translate that?
There was still
there's no
be women
shortage
to
of
give
men. Like
birth,
there's
yeah.
always going to be a woman to birth a
give
man.
birth.
So don't fight over men.
Well, like I said earlier, there wasn't any pride. Now that has changed. I think maybe it's human nature that it's only when you've lost or you're on the verge of losing something that you come to appreciate it. But I think certainly when I was growing up, and as I said, the 60s, the 70s, it was dismissed as grammarless, as broken French, as corrupted French. But I think there is an awareness, and I would give a lot of credit to St. Lucia, Dominica, and Trinidad, those islands, for raising the awareness and helping people understand that it is a language in its own right. There's nothing broken about it. There's nothing corrupted about it. There is a grammar, there's a vocabulary, all the elements that you need to call a language are there. And I think, particularly in the case of St. Lucia, I think language and national identity are inextricably linked. So I think that now in Grenada we are seeing it. We are in some quarters, I think, where there's an awareness. We are seeing it as really, this is part of our identity, our linguistic heritage that we really should not lose. So that I think there's certainly been what would I would call almost a seismic shift in the attitude towards Creole. And I would say a palpable sense of nostalgia. People really now want it. They want it back. They want to revive it. Because when I was interviewing what I call the elders, the Creole speakers in the rural parts of Grenada, they were telling me that little children, and I remember one of the ladies saying that this height, they would come to me and they know they want to learn Creole. But in my day, Creole was nothing. That was the word she said.
Ouais, maman, parler créole, c'est un bel bagaille. Et puis, enseigner les petits mamans là, parce que si ça pas fait, qui me qui fait pas autres.
I would say just make a conscious effort. Like, a lot of people don't realize that there's more Creole speakers than English speakers in the Caribbean. There's more people that speak Kwéyòl than speak English in the Caribbean. So, like, let's stop this whole, it's a minority language, it's a broken language, or it's a dialect. It's a language in itself. Its own alphabet, its own writing system, been published in Bibles, newspapers. People speak it, all walks of life speak it. Politicians, lawyers, doctors, policemen, poor people, rich people, across the board. Let's just make a conscious effort for it to not get to a point where it's almost a dying language, because it's a beautiful language. It's an amazing way to express yourself, and it's at the root of our culture, you know. Like I said, it's folklore, it's music, it's food, it's plant names, it's town names, it's surnames. So yeah, I mean, let's just make a conscious effort, because once it's gone, you can't bring it back, you know. So yeah.
Pas vina dans pays an d'autres moun et oublier qui moun zoye ou qui moun et qui moun ti moun azotye. Faut encourager ti moun azot à connaître culture azot. Voilà.
Even though how much anglicized or francophone we are and so on, there is something about the language that we ended up creating in the Caribbean, and the attempt at shutting down the use of any type of Africanism or any type of creativity of the people of African descent. That the soul in the language, which was considered unsophisticated, was able to like rise up and say what was in their heart and how they saw the world. Because when you listen to the expressions, you're seeing an artist's world. You're hearing a musician. You are seeing those things that they were described not to be. They were laborers, they were workers, that's all, they were slaves. But in the language, you are getting that they were artists, they were mothers, they were, you know, princes and kings and so on. And I think like deep down, if we were to dig, that is why the language is seen as our identity, and we cannot escape it, and we don't want to escape it. Yeah.
So, is there anything, final thoughts you would like to say to people, just to anyone, any final thoughts?
Always teach your kids with their heritage, their language, everything you know about yourself and your ancestors, teach your kids and pass it on.
We cannot let it die. We cannot let it die.
Franchement, c'est une très bonne question. Je pense que le créole est toujours important parce que c'est quelque chose qu'on a hérité, ça fait déjà des années. Depuis l'esclavage, le créole était utilisé par les esclaves pour communiquer entre eux. Et c'est une manière d'expression, de libération. On va dire que c'est... Comment dire? C'est quelque chose qui nous est propre, c'est quelque chose qu'on veut perpétuer, même si on va dire qu'à l'époque, le créole était une langue plutôt mal vue. Les gens n'osaient pas la parler. Franchement, c'était quelque chose de mal vu. Tandis que maintenant, les mentalités évoluent et les gens sont de plus en plus intéressés à parler la langue. Donc je pense que c'est aussi l'évolution des consciences, des mentalités qui fait que le créole continue d'exister. Et je pense qu'il va continuer parce que nous, notre génération, il ne se passe pas un jour sans qu'on parle créole, sans qu'on puisse échanger en créole. Donc je pense que c'est grâce à ça que le créole va continuer de perpétuer. C'est toujours, on va dire, une façon d'exister toujours pour nous. Donc je pense qu'il faudrait garder cette richesse que l'on a et continuer à parler créole sans oublier notre langue, on va dire, qu'on nous a entre guillemets imposé, le français. Mais notre langue maternelle, il ne faut pas l'oublier. Et je pense que c'est ce qui fait la différence.
Merci, thank you.
Thank you.
Parlez pas toi, parlez pas toi, allez dit, parlez pas toi, allez m'a dit, parlez pas toi, à dit, parlez dimanche tous les samedis.
In the yard, at times, they would come and speak to you in Creole. So I remember once I made a paper aeroplane and I threw it in the class. And so that meant some lashes. And before that, I'd developed this myth that I wouldn't cry if you beat me. So I thought, well, no, I'm not going to let them get pleasure out of this. So when they beat me, although I feel pain, I won't cry. Yeah? And to my schoolmates, what I would say to them is, oh, let koko makaka sula memwe. So there's a little kind of, I don't know if it's a flour, and if you break it, it has milk in it. It's a little red flour, and literally we call it monkey's penis. So if you take the monkey's penis flour and rub it on your hands, then you could be like me and not feel the pain. So I was lying to them, and I guess I was lying to the teachers. So I was acting, basically. But one day, the day I threw the aeroplane, paper aeroplane, the teacher then came to me in the yard where he was planning to punish me, and he did, "Mwetan Morgan, upaka play way, mwakai batu jikta u play way. I hear, Morgan, you don't cry, so I'm going to keep lashing you till you cry." I then remember thinking to myself, this man's an idiot. Okay, so the first time he hit me, I burst out crying. There you are, telling me what your intention is. Yeah? So your theory is I'm going to stand there You're first lashman. Cry, gone. So, if you like, long before I got to Britain, I had a basic understanding of humans and some of their potential behaviors.
And in Hackney, and they are challenging, and I'm trying my best to be firm and to, but part of me is quailing inside because these kids are just, totally different from Caribbean kids that I've taught. So this little boy called me Sakwe Afwiche one day, you damned African, because that's meant to be an insult, you see. So I pretended I didn't hear, far less understand. And then one day when I'd had enough, when he was overdoing it, I said, Assis Chuala Shezla, Moka Futeo Hot Finetla. Get yourself on this. Oh, should I have stood up?
Should have stood up, I don't know why.
Shall I do it again?
Start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Start from the beginning.
De retour en Martinique, Jean-Philippe partage sa vie entre son métier de paysagiste et son jardin secret de Balzac. Des années d'un labeur passionné donne naissance en 1986.
You could do it, you could do it.
Thank you. Who was it? Is it good? That means
Il est sanctuaire. Il n'y a personne derrière moi.